my goodness! Yeah! Holy sh!
Well, hey folks, welcome back to the channel. Look what I got here, another lawnmower project. I'm fairly new to the off-roading mower thing. If regular viewers have already seen my Crippler build, which was a Craftsman. And if you remember right, I said I was going to throw together one that was cheap and simple. This is my victim. I have set up at a private off-road park here in southern Iowa on June 25th, a day for us to go out and play on off-roading mowers. Anybody out there that's watching this is welcome to come. Like I said, it's a private park. We should have the place to ourselves, no trucks and buggies and ATVs and all that. But I just want to warn you, this place has been there for years, and there's been trucks and buggies and Jeeps and all that out there. So if you do come and you see a mud hole, think twice about it. There's a lot of deep mud holes out there that big old trucks have been whomping on for a long time. But that being said, everybody's welcome. If you're within driving distance of southern Iowa and want to come, just check out the description of the video, and I'll have my email there. Shoot me an email and I'll give you more information. But anyway, let's take a look at this beastie. So this is a Scott's, manufactured by John Deere. The guy I got it from said that it ran, but he was getting tired of the poor quality of the cut. And he fought with it and dinked with it and messed with it, and he just got sick of it and he parked it. So then when he told me that, I went over and looked at it, determined the engine was not stuck, and we made a deal. Manual transmission, vertical shaft. I already took the liberty of taking the mowing deck off just so I could get jack stands underneath it, get it up high enough to where it's more comfortable to work on. The steering was a bit stiff from it sitting around. I have no idea how long it sat around. I didn't ask him, but I went ahead and I lubed up the steering gear that's underneath here and greased the spindles, and it's nice and free now. But man, look at that lock to lock, which leads me to what potentially might be one of my first problems. I always cringe when I see somebody's mower build and they take the wheels there and they basically just strip the tire off of this rim and weld the one rim to the other, because like, holy crap, the scrub radius is way out here. But seeing as how, yeah, this has so much travel going to lock that way, I'm thinking that I'm going to have to do some variation of that. And yeah, that's going to make steering really hard, especially the further the lock you get. If I do have to end up doing that, it might end up with a bigger steering wheel to give me more leverage, but we'll see. Time will tell. Yeah, these are going to be my tires, my fronts, rears. These were the tires that were on my Craftsman Crippler build, but I took them off for this because a recent swap meet, I did find another set of tires that were the same height as these, but a little bit wider, so I put those on the Craftsman instead. The height of these tires might make the front end sit up a little bit higher, and if well, there's no doubt about it, it is going to sit higher. If it's sitting high enough that it bothers me, I might have to do something about that. I got a couple ideas. We'll see how that works out. I'm not crazy about the muffler location, so it's probably going to go bye-bye. It's tucked up in there. I can see, yeah, getting the outlet jammed into something and choking the engine out. I don't like the sound of these engines with open exhaust, but it might come to that. Otherwise, I've got a small little car muffler over there. I don't know where it came from. It was in the back of a parts truck, so might find a way to cobble it onto there. Here's my big concern, because I said that I wanted to make this a quick and easy build, but I'm going to weld that rear end or lock it up somehow. I don't know. When you're off-roading, you want traction. Traction is the more tires you got pulling. I don't know. I'm just going to say it right now. If you're out there without a locked rear end on one of these, you're just a clown. That's my take of it. But after getting this thing up in the air and looking at it, I'll show you here. transaxle is puny. It is absolutely tiny. I don't know, I'm wasting my time taking that out of there and locking it up or not, but I'm gonna do it anyway. That thing might not last for crap. It's so puny and weak looking. For now, the first hurdle is to see if we can get this engine running. I think first thing I'm going to do is pull this engine cover off and make sure there isn't a bunch of mouse nests in there. Well, pulling the access panel off of the air filter shows there's already a bunch of crap in there. Pretty simple, had 2 bolts back here and 2 right up here. Should come right off, looks like. Maybe not. Seems to be something holding it here at the carburetor. There. Yeah, not too bad in there. No mouse nest anyway. Now, even though the engine isn't stuck, what I'm going to do at this point, I'm going to pull the spark plug out and put some sort of lubrication in there. Well, my dad had a snapper rear engine mower that he gave me that had been sitting in his shed for years and years. So it was inside, and it was fine. He told me just get it out of here, do what I want with it. I brought it home, I was going to get it running, and I don't know, either use it or sell it or whatnot. But the engine on it was free, but once I started cranking on it, it started getting stuck, and I ended up finally just pulling the cylinder head off it. There was no rust or any debris in there. It was just that engine had sat for so long that all the lubrication in the cylinder had drained away. So I want to hopefully prevent that from happening to this one by pulling the spark plug and squirting some sort of penetrating on there just to lubricate the rings up. Oh yeah, that's the stuff. That ought to be enough. Alright, I got a battery hooked up. Let's see if we can get this thing to crank. I'm sure it has a bunch of bullshit safety switches all over it that I'm probably going to have to defeat one way or another, but we'll just try the key for now. Nope. Probably a safety switch in the seat. Get on this without knocking it off the jack stand. Neutral. Clutch. Nothing. Guess we'll just do it this way. See if we can get it to, at least see if the starter will engage. Okay. I don't know if the camera picked it up, but the starter gear did turn just a little bit. Maybe I can get it freed up here. There we go. Just not kicking up into there. Well, folks, as if you needed any more proof that I was an idiot, here you go. I had my cables hooked up on the battery wrong. So it was spinning the starter motor the wrong way, which was pulling the gear down instead of up. Alright, I still can't get it to crank even with the battery hooked up correctly. A little diagnosing. Let me point out here, first I've got, there's a safety switch down in there for the clutch pedal. There's a safety switch under the seat. And then there's this safety switch that's just hanging here for some reason. I have found out I am getting power to the key switch here, to the red wire. but it's not making it to the solenoid, and even if I jump a hot wire to either one of these posts, nothing happens. So my solenoid is foobar. One nice thing about these engines, you don't need power to make the engine run. It generates its own spark through this magnet and trigger assembly. So it'll run without any electricity whatsoever, but the way you shut it off is by grounding the coil wire right here. So I'm going to try to bypass all that crap and then just jump the starter right to it. So basically all I had to do was trace the coil wire from there down through here, and it goes through this plug. So I just unplugged it. So now the coil, I know for sure, is not grounded. So if everything's all right, it should make spark when I crank it over. Although it does not crank over very fast, so I'm thinking it is going to need another starter motor. But let's see what happens with spark here. I am getting spark. Alright, so I'm paring down the wiring here. I decided I was just going to get rid of this fuel shutoff solenoid because it did cause me problems with my Craftsman crippler build. It worked initially, but then it crapped out. What happens here is this, it powers up this electromagnet in this casing. Once it energizes this electromagnet, it moves this plunger right here, pulls it down, and allows fuel to flow into the carburetor. So what I will do is just push that down in there, put it back on, and it'll be fine. It'll just be always open. Now that I've got this off, it's going to allow me to look into this carburetor float bowl. And judging by the tip of that solenoid valve, I'm guessing it's going to be pretty nasty in there. Let's find out. Oh man. Wow. I didn't expect it to be nearly that bad. Good Lord. This might be a lost cause. Wow. Yeah, that carburetor's definitely going to be coming off in there. Take a look at that. That is nasty. Alright, I got the wiring pretty much sorted out except for the ground wire here that kills the ignition. I thought for sure there would be something up there in the ignition switch that would actually ground it when you shut the switch off, but there's nothing. There's two actual ground wires coming off it, but they're ground all the time. So I don't know what actually shut this thing off. Maybe it was the fuel shut-off solenoid. But anyway, it will actually crank now. I think I must have cleaned up the post right here. But it doesn't crank very fast. Come on, do something. Got the different battery and a heavier set of jumper cables here. Kind of backfiring through the intake there. Not looking good, folks. I'm wondering if the valves are out of adjustment. But I'm out of time for today. I'll have to pick this up tomorrow. Alright folks, back at it again today. As the hours of my life tick away before the reaper takes me, I'm out here wasting my time on this turd. Anyway, as I left this yesterday, I gave it some thought. And I was hoping that the valves were just out of adjustment based on the way it had a little backfire coming out of the intake, and also when I did the timing on my Vanguard V-twin on my crippler, these are very touchy about that when these valves get out. But anyway, I know there was a little trick to it, but I couldn't quite remember what it was. Like when I did the V-twin on my Crippler, which is a Vanguard, which I think I already mentioned. This is a Intech. But I did a little research just to refresh my memory. And while doing that research, apparently these Intechs, which are built, aren't quite as robust as the Vanguards. The Vanguards are kind of a commercial industrial, to my understanding, where these are just homeowner grade, so they're built cheaper. But apparently, anyway, the Intechs are, as somebody I know that uses this word quite a lot, notorious for the camshaft breaking. And what it is, it's not actually the camshaft itself. There's a compression release that makes it easier for this thing to crank. And there's a little mechanism that's built into the camshaft. And that will break and fail and cause the same symptoms of what I was running into. Crank over, but also valves being out of adjustment will do that too. So anyway, a lot of talking here. Apologize for that. But as you can see, I have the rocker cover off. I'm going to check for, see if the valves are in adjustment. I'm not going to go through it. There's plenty of videos out there to show you how I do it. But I will point out that I've run into 3 different types of videos. Number 1, they're telling you to roll it over to top dead center, and that did not work on my Vanguard. Because if you do it that way on the intake, the compression release is interfering with that. You need to roll it a little bit past top dead center to do the intake valve. The exhaust valve doesn't matter, top dead center is fine. The second type of video I've run into was the way where they tell you how to roll it a little bit past, I think, 1/4 inch they were saying. Put your screwdriver down in your spark plug hole, find top dead center, measure 1/4 inch, go on past a little bit. That's what worked on my Vanguard. But I also ran into one where they were saying just roll it over to where either your intake is at full compression and then do your exhaust, and then roll over your exhaust on full compression and do your intake. I think I'm going to give that one a shot. But anyway, while also doing that research, I found where a couple of people were talking about how if you really watch, you can see your intake valve. If your decompression thing is there and working and functional, you can actually see it as the intake valve opens back up. Like I said, you have to watch real careful, and I think I'm seeing it here, but maybe it's just wishful thinking, but you can actually see the intake valve just as it's about all the way open, or sorry, just about as it's all the way shut. It'll actually bump itself open for just a quick little moment. And I think I'm seeing that here, so I'm hopeful that my decompression mechanism is still intact on this, and I just need the valves adjusted. So I've been yabbering on too long now. I'm going to go ahead and we'll let you know how the results are. All right, I got the valves adjusted, and now that I've done that, I can definitely see that intake valve have that extra little bump in it when it is actually coming up. That's telling me that the decompression mechanism there and it's working. Let's see if I can rotate it there for you to see. All right, it's compressing. Now as it comes up and as it's almost up to its top of its travel, it'll just bump down a little bit. Right there, you see it? And then it pops back up again. I'll back it up and show you again. Coming up, up, bumps down for the compression release, and then back up. So I'm hopeful that I'm in good shape here. Let's put her back together and see if she'll crank over now. Alright, got the spark plug back in, so I got compression. I haven't put the rocker cover back on yet, so I'm going to have to make a new gasket for it. But yeah, at this point I just want to know how well it's going to crank over now. Let's try adding a little fuel, see what happens. Once just isn't enough, is it? Lost my crank. What's going on here? So as far as getting the engine running, we're going to call it good for now and start building the mower. Well, that was relatively quick and easy. Maybe the wise thing to do would have been to just use the hubs that I cut out of the front wheels and put a bigger flange on it and put a bolt pattern on it to where they could be bolted on and off, but that's not the quick thing to do, which is what this whole idea is supposed to be about. All right, it's the next day. I've got it split apart. I expect this is the bottom here. I expected all that stuff to stay in the bottom, but it didn't because the shifter held it all in. That's fine. When I go to put it back together, I'll just flip that upside down, put everything in that case, and then put the bottom case onto it. I think I got all the bushings and seals and whatnot in there. That's all fine. What I'm thinking I want to do here, I think I'm just going to order a piece of solid 3/4 inch shaft to run through here. I think that's going to drastically improve the strength of this whole thing. As you can see, these offer no strength whatsoever because they're just, basically they're able to pivot the whole case and let it bust apart that way. I don't know if that's an issue with these or not, but I feel that'll be stronger. Now also this bowl gear here, or ring gear, whatever you want to call it, it rides, it kind of floats in a sense. It rides in these grooves here in the case. So that's going to present a little bit of a challenge getting the solid rod that I'm going to run through here engaged into that bowl gear. I think I have seen a video in the past where a guy did this basic concept. I may have to go find that video and check it out again, but I think what I'm going to do is I'll get a coupler that will engage this shaft here, and then I think I will have to drill holes in that coupler to put this pin in it. Of course, obviously I can't run the pin through the whole coupler. I'll just have to cut the pin, drive it into the coupler, maybe tack weld it in, but just make it so the pin goes into the coupler and then it will gauge the bowl gear here, because that pin does come out of there. As you can see, that's my plan at this point anyway. And it doesn't have to be a precise fit. You wouldn't want it to be too precise. The reason I couldn't just take the coupler, put it in here, and then weld it to this is because any little bit of variance on that, getting it welded together, is going to throw the whole thing out of whack and make it bind up. So whatever happens in here has to float independent of that bowl gear. But anyway, I got to order parts, so let's move on to something else while I get figured out what I need to order and wait for it to get here. So this is the pulley that was on the bottom of the engine. This actually drives the transaxle. Now initially I was just going to cut this off here, bolt it back on appropriately, but I think I'm going to go with this pulley here for a couple of reasons. Initially I was not going to do a pulley swap. I wasn't really interested in making it faster, but the belt underneath there is totally rotten, so it needs a new belt anyway, so why not? And plus, making it faster, this larger pulley will give it a lot more engagement area, surface area to grab. Unfortunately, I cannot get this thing off. I have got the torch out. I've tried heating up the center hub. That was a while ago. It's cooled off now, and I cannot get it to budge off of there. What I'm going to do, for years, I've always kept these old early Bronco drum brake spindles out there in my shed, and I didn't know why, but today's the day. So while I'm waiting for my rear axle parts for this, let's continue on with this carburetor issue. I found this used carburetor just down the road from me. Paid a little more than I wanted to for it, but it looks to be the same thing even though it was off a smaller engine. Now I know I can get on eBay and buy a Chinese-made carburetor for these for little or nothing, but those Chinese cheap products are pretty hit and miss in my experience, especially when it came to working on my Suzuki King Quad. If you watched that video, you saw that the brand new fuel pump, it was a vacuum pulse fuel pump for that Suzuki King Quad. It was some Chinese knockoff, and it had two problems. Number one, it was assembled wrong, and number two, one of the springs in it was way too heavy that it would never work. So I basically took parts from the new one and the old one and made it work. But yeah, that really soured me on these cheap Chinese parts. So I would just as soon use this factory one and clean it up and get it working again. So what I'm going to try to do is earlier this winter I got that ultrasonic cleaner and I did a comparison of different cleaning materials in it. And in the comments I had a couple of people, I know at least one, maybe two, suggested I try straight gasoline in it. Now they didn't say, but I'm assuming that you don't use the heating element in that, you know, if you're going to be filling it full of gasoline. But I'm going to go ahead and give that a shot, without the heating element, obviously. Well, if you're like me, you've watched Joe Dirt enough times that anytime you pour gasoline into something other than not a gas tank, you got to go, gasoline, breakfast of champions. Now there was obviously plenty of room in there, so I'm just going to go ahead and do both of them, because as you recall, or may not recall, the one carburetor that did come off the mower really didn't look as bad as I thought it would be. It was just mostly the float bowl that was rusted away. And because this one was off of a smaller engine, even though it looks the same, it might be jetted differently. So, I don't know. Couldn't hurt to do both of them because there's plenty of room in there anyway. Let's see here. Woohoo! Look at it go! Alright, 30 minutes of cleaning. I can't really say I'm all that impressed. Took some off. Here's the original carb. Yeah, I don't know. I think I will probably get a little small screwdriver and break off some of the worst of this. Give it another 30 minutes. Well, another 30 minutes in there. I can't say I'm terribly impressed. I can't see another bit of difference after the second session, but yeah, overall I'm just not impressed with the gasoline idea. I'll just have to go on in town, get some Pine Sol. Alright folks, my parts came in yesterday. Let me show you what I came up with here. I think it worked out pretty damn good. Pretty much just like I described. I took this center hub here and drilled a 1/2 inch hole, because that was the pin size here, all the way through it. My reference point for being able to go straight through it was one of the set screw holes that was right there. I just used the drill bit that would just fit into there, drilled through, and just kept going one size bigger, one size bigger, one size bigger. I only broke one drill bit doing it, but yeah, I got it out to 1/2 inch, and it's even still tight enough that I had to drive the pins in a little bit. Obviously the pin does not go all the way through because the axle shaft goes through. I cut the pin in half, drove each half into the hub, and then trimmed it down to fit inside the gear. So it does indeed float in there. I've got these locking collars on each side that hold it in place, and I just happen to have the right shims to put on each side to keep it centered right in there. What I'm going to do next is clean up here and here where the seals are, and then I'll put a dab of JB Weld in each one of these, and then when it's dry I will sand it off. So yeah, grease cannot get through the keyway past the seal there. Then I should be ready to seal it up and see if it's going to bind up on me. On another note, I cleaned up my carbs in the sonic or ultrasonic cleaner using the old standby Pine Sol. Once again, it kicked the shit out of the gasoline idea. So, sorry guys, it suggested gasoline. The Pine Sol wins again. It is yet again a couple days later. Got the JB weld there in the keyway. Nice and cured. I'm going to go ahead and whittle it down to shape now. There it is, all slicked up. All right, this isn't back together quite yet. I decided to do just a little test fit. I cleaned up the cases, put it together, and I just wanted to find out if it was going to bind up before I sealed it up for good. Everything's turning great, so I'm going to pop it back apart, seal it up, and call it good. I did notice when I was cleaning the case off, the wear on the top of the housing right in here, and in the bottom of the housing right in this area down here, which obviously with the axle shafts being loose in here, floating on those side gears, the leverage factor would do that, and that's why I'm thinking the solid shaft all the way through will help it with strength. Now, I'm no expert in these. I know this is probably not really a desirable transaxle for vertical shaft mowers for off-roading, and but you know, it's what I got. I'm throwing this thing together cheap, but I guess my point is I've seen pictures that people have posted up of blown up transaxles, and it almost looks suspiciously to me like instead of the internal gears failing, it looked to me like it was a leverage factor. Like I said, you're putting all this leverage here and it's relatively unsupported in here, and then it would just through the off-roading abuse, it just blew everything out through the bottom of the case. Now, like I said, I'm no expert on these. I could be totally wrong. That was just the take I took of it from the blown up transaxles I've seen. So I'm feeling pretty good about the solid shaft run all the way through it. It did cost me, not a fortune, but yeah, it cost a few bucks to get all these lock collars and the shaft and all that in there. But what the hell? I figure it's worth the effort to try it. Well, folks, I got a little problem here. Before I assembled this, I took the little brake assembly off because I did not want to try to be fighting with getting this little, I guess you could call this a disc brake rotor. I didn't want to be trying to fight getting that aligned up between the pads, you know, in the caliper. And unfortunately, I did not even notice. I mean, I knew I took that brake pad out of that side, but I didn't put it back in there, and now I can't. I have one of two options. I can either split the case back apart again, or I can pull this brake rotor off. And I think I'm going to pull the brake rotor off because it seems to me this little brake caliper is a really crude mechanism, but there is a brake lining on each side. One goes in there, and the one goes there. Now, it seems to me, in order for this to work at its most effective, that this rotor should float on that shaft. Otherwise, it's never really going to get up against this pad that sits down in this recess here. So yeah, I've tried gently prying on it already and it wouldn't budge. So I think I'm going to heat up the center hub, see if I can't get it pried off there and clean up the shaft and get it to where, yeah, it'll just float on the shaft, because there is no set screw. There is a keyway, but there's no set screw. So yeah, that's just another hint to me that it should float on the shaft. All right. Check it out, all slicked up. If I can get it on there without knocking everything out of place. Get in there. There we go. It catches a little bit, but under actual braking pressure, I'm sure it will do what it needs to do. Now, obviously, it'll rust up the first time it gets wet and then sits for a few days. So to try to prevent that, I'm just going to give it a nice little smear of waterproof grease. And as you can see, I've drilled holes in the sheave to let water and mud get drained out of there, or forced out by the belt. Anyway, it won't be trapped in there causing the belt to slip, in theory. I don't know, my engine pulley's around here somewhere. I did the same thing with it. So if you were having trouble trying to envision just what the hell I was trying to accomplish with this, maybe this will illustrate it better. As you can see, well, maybe as you can see, right in there, there's the one brake shoe that's actually in the case. The other one's over here. But when you actually activate the little brake mechanism, the only thing that moves is this pad is pushed against this rotor. And now if this rotor is actually stuck on the shaft, the only thing that's actually doing any braking is the one shoe. Now, with this little rotor able to float like it is, wait a minute, there we go. When the brake is activated, it actually pushes the rotor over into the second shoe that's embedded into the case. So both shoes are doing an equal amount of work, in theory, until the rotor rusts up on the shaft again. Alright, so for the rear wheels, I'm doing just pretty much what I did for the front. I cut the center out of the original wheels. Basically cut there and there with a cutting wheel, then ground her down flush. And I'm going to weld it into these ATV wheels that I've got. So shiny, so chrome. Alright, got the freshened up carb back on it. I've got the wiring figured out. Other than there's still no way to hook the kill wire into the ignition switch from what I'm seeing. My problem why I quit cranking the other day was connection right here, right off the solenoid that feeds the hot wire. Let's go ahead and put some gas in the carb and see what happens. Now I did feel like there was something pulsing here, because that's that pulse type fuel pump right there. I'm not sure I want to use the gas tank that's mounted underneath here. It smells nasty, and the seal that was on the cap underneath had been crumbling, and there's a bunch of crap in there. And besides that, I kind of want to build like a tube structure up here, just as a place to, grab it, push on it, whatever, and protect the engine in case of a rollover. But I kind of have that little metal round gas tank. I want to hang it up here and kind of gravity feed it, possibly. I'm just not sure yet. I am really rather surprised how level this is sitting, because the size, the upgrade in tire size to the front was way more than the rear. So I was assuming, yeah, you can see it does sit a little bit higher in the front, but yeah, not nearly what I expected. I have run into my first couple of problems. Now, as you recall, this was supposed to be a quick and simple build. Nothing ever really is it? Look at that. And yeah, there's even more movement to come, if the axle articulates and pushes it up. So what I believe I'm going to do, this is shouldn't be too much work really. I'm going to grind these welds and take this channel, cross member, whatever you want to call it, move the whole thing up right to about here. So that's about what, 4 inches? And then I'll just extend the tire rods the same amount right there. Shouldn't be too terribly difficult. Well, here's the plan I've come up with. I don't know if it, excuse me. I don't know if it's showing, but I scribed a line right here. I'm going to cut the frame off here and right along here. That will allow me to tie the cross member into the top engine mounting plate a little bit. Then I will patch this back up. I've cleaned all this off because I'm going to put some welds along here, and I probably might run some right along these sides too. right, the cross member's welded in. I might add some more structure up here. I'm not sure yet what I'm going to do for like a cage around the engine though, so I might be able to tie it in with that. Welded all these seams here and underneath. We're not going to focus on those because they did not weld worth a crap. They didn't weld very well because of the imperfections that were boiling out of that seam. While I had this cross member out, I took the opportunity to mess with my new drive pulley. And it is bigger, and this might present a problem. The small pulley was just a little tiny diameter thing here. And the belt, well, I don't know if I'm going to be able to pick this up. The belt ran inside here and inside here. This is going to be a problem with this bigger pulley. I might have to go back to the smaller one. I'm thinking about doing something different with the brake, so that might not be a problem on this side. From what I've been able to do a little test fitting here, the belt on this side, where the linkage comes up through there, that is for the actual disengagement clutch, so we kind of have to have that, but the belt will just barely rub on it. But if it rubs too hard, I guess I could pull this whole plate out and just move this arm, refabricate the arm to move it over just a little bit. We shall see. Seems like that's how these things are. You modify one thing and it affects something else, so you have to modify that. Go figure. Got the original gap all patched up right there. Alright, for the steering, I gained about 4.5 inches. Pushed the axle forward. Here's the axle. I went in and cut that big triangular shaped bracket off the bottom of it that was the front deck mount. And I've already cut the arms. Once again, I went to the scrap pile. I'm just going to extend them with this old lug wrench and a piece of rebar. Well, I got one side tacked together. I'm just going to tack it for now and fit it up, make sure I don't need to make some adjustments before I burn it down for good. I did give up on using the rebar idea. By the time I would have ground that rebar down enough to get all the rust out of it to make a good weld, it would have been woefully thin. So I scrounged around and found another piece of steel here. Alright, I'm glad I didn't weld this because I've got a big problem here, and I kind of created it myself. I've got two things going on here. One, when this axle used to be back here, you can see the frame was a lot lower than up here. And plus, when I welded in the crossmember channel up here, I raised it up about 1/2 inch. And both of those factors have conspired to cause this problem. As you can see, the axle is nowhere near its full articulation potential. Now, if I steer it over there first, then it kind of helps, but it's still not topping out. So, and frankly, this is kind of a good thing because I was thinking maybe I'd have to shave this down or something, but honestly, I think I can just run a straight shot from here right to here and eliminate this curve. I think the only reason this curve was there was for deck clearance. So by taking this big old curve out of that tie rod, that will make the whole tie rod stronger. One less place for the tie rod to bend. So if you envision it going straight across to here, it will be nowhere near getting into that. And sure, it'll hang down a little bit, but I don't think that's really going to be an issue. There should be plenty of ground clearance, plus the tire will be right in here. If it were clear back here in the middle, this way, that would be a problem because you could belly out on it, but I don't think that's really going to be an issue. All right, folks, here's my solution. The hose clamps are just temporary. They're a test phase, I guess you could say. See if I can do this in full lock. All the clearance I would ever want. Now I did, like I said, this was just a test. And then, I was talking before about putting it on the bottom. But by tucking it on the inside, it gives me a little more clearance at full lock before the tire gets into it. I didn't have any more 5/8 rod, couldn't find any more, so I'm using 3/4. It's a little more weight, but if there's anywhere that this thing could use some more weight, would be in the front. What I'm probably going to do next, I'll do both sides, and I'll just leave them hose clamped like this. I'll put the tires and wheels back on, set it down on the ground, and then get everything, loosen up the hose clamps, get everything aligned where the steering wheel is straight and the tires are straight, and then I'll tack them in place, jack it back up, pull them all out, weld them for good. All right, folks, let's see if I can show you the finished product. Well, obviously nowhere near any contact there. Nor there. Additionally, there was a little pad that was cast into the axle here. I ground it off, and man, that made quite a noticeable difference in articulation here. I'd say I gained an inch of travel out here at the wheel just by grinding that little pad off. Now, honestly, this was kind of my own fault, having to move the axle forward and mess with the tire rods and all that, but it was all because I put those tires on. They were just too big. Obviously, the easier solution would have been to put some smaller tires on, but these were what I had. So, damn it, I'm going to make them work. And sometimes it's kind of fun and satisfying, coming up with a solution to a problem. And besides that, I think stretching the wheelbase kind of put things more into proportion with the height that it's at. I think it just looks better with that little bit longer wheelbase. All right, folks, it's been a few days since I worked on the mower here. I've been so busy with other things. And when you're juggling so many projects, it seems like you're getting nothing done. It's gave me time to think about this. I was contemplating moving the rear axle back. That is undoubtedly the best way to keep the front end down, because like stretching the front end out, the only weight that I've transferred is the weight of the front axle and tires forward. By pushing the rear axle back, that means you've pushed pretty much the weight of the entire mower forward, and that will help keep the nose down. This is 1 3/4 between these two bolts. Just as a test to see if this is even going to work, I'm going to egg this hole out 1/4 inch backwards and just bolt this, move the axle back that 2 inches, and just use that as a test. The biggest issue, and I know I'm going to have to cut the whole bottom of this off, but I was wanting to make a better toe point up here. I will reinforce that with a piece of angle iron to get some rigidity back in it. But the biggest reason I don't go more than 2 inches, I can't really show it to you. This is part of the shifter linkage here, and there's a rod on it right in here. It runs here and hooks into that arm that's on the transaxle. I need to keep, it's maybe about 4.5 inches. I need to keep some length on it in order to, hopefully keep the right geometry. If I make that rod in here too short, it won't be capable of making the swing of the arm. I'm probably doing a terrible job of explaining this. Alright, there it is, moved back. Now obviously I won't leave it like that. If I do decide to do this, I'll weld another tab here, piece of angle iron, and there's also these here that handle the torque. I'll have to re-drill that hole right there 2 inches back. But anyway, here's the big deciding factor, is this rod that I was talking about. Now on the back side, this rod swings in an arc like this because of the linkage it's attached to. And on the front side, it swings in an arc like this. And if I get this rod too short, those two different arcs will not work together and the thing will just bind up. So I'm going to cut 2 inches out of that, tack weld it together, see if it works. Wow, that came out really, really short. Well, let's throw it on there and see what happens. Well, there's the linkage in place. It seems okay, but it's one of those things that, can you see the problem here? Get the light from shining in there too much. It's one of those, you modify one thing and you mess into having to modify something else. As you can see, the frame was clearanced here for the swing of this arm, but now the whole thing's been moved back 2 inches. I'm going to have to trim this off here. We'll be right back after I get that done. It just occurred to me as I was finishing cutting that off, there was plenty of meat here. I could have just trimmed that arm off a little bit. Good news, everyone! I think it's going to work. It seems to be falling in all the detents in all the right places. It's probably not showing up on video, but 3, 4. She's a little notchy, but anyway, that's enough of that crap. You just have to take my word for it. It seems to be working. I'm going to pull that linkage back out of there, weld it up, and start making all the brackets to hold the housing in place. So let's take a look at the finished result. I'm pretty pleased with it. Just some scraps of angle iron there. Let's see if I can get in there and see. My welds really aren't that bad when I clean up the metal. Same thing on the other side. Bridged it with a piece of nice heavy-duty angle iron here. I could just bore a hole in that and use that as my toe point, but I'll probably build something kind of triangulated here where the hole goes through it this way. Look at that. There's a bearing there, so there's more going on. This is not done yet. This bearing here, when I ordered stuff from Surplus Center, these were only $5 a piece. I'm going to build like a support off of that coming up here and around. I'm not sure how I'm going to do it yet, but I'm going to do a support. Let's take a look at the finished results now that the axle's pushed back another 2 inches. I'm very pleased with it. Just like pushing the front axle forward, I think it really helped the looks of it. I'm a maniac! What have I done? Obviously, I pulled the, I don't know what you'd call it, the fender pan, the footboards, whatever you want to call that. I pulled that off, and I have multiple reasons for doing that. First of all, I got to fix that, but more importantly, these were the outriggers, the supports, whatever you want to call them. When I would feel in here with my fingers, I could feel a bunch of dried up dead grass and cobwebs. So I figured if I was going to be welding on that, it was going to set that stuff on fire, and my gas tank sits right here and it would set that on fire. And I wanted to get the gas tank out anyway to clean it out. It's done clean, it's drying out now. And it made things a lot easier. Like this is my clutch return spring. It hooked over this. This was previously a piece of the deck raising and lowering mechanism. Kind of overkill just for a spring now, but I figured, what the hell, weld it in there, might add some rigidity to the frame. I did want to get rid of all the brake assembly here. I'm going to try to mount another brake pedal over here. A little playing I've done on my Craftsman, that's fine for mowing a yard. Having your clutch and your brake pedal is one, but playing around, bouncing off-road, no suspension, any of you that used to watch Ren and Stimpy know what Mr. Horse would say when he was interviewed. No, sir, I don't like it. So I'm not exactly sure what my plan is for that brake assembly, but I'm going to try to come up with some sort of a right foot brake assembly for this. Let's take a closer look at my outriggers for the axles. Now I have triangulated them just a little bit, and I did tie this one in right here. This stuff is kind of flimsy, so I wanted to tie it in right here where there were two planes of structure coming together. And then this one kind of ties into this frame rail here, which is a lot more sturdy. I could have made it better. I mean, I could have ran like an outrigger clear up here to take care of forward and back flexibility, but you know, how much turd polishing do I really want to do with this? If this turns out to be a really good off-roader and I wipe out that rear end, I might look at putting something more heavy duty in it. I think a Peerless 820, that's kind of the the metric that every other vertical shaft engine transaxle is measured against, it seems like. So I'll keep my eyes open for one of them. Yeah, having that off of there gave me the opportunity to clean all that up, all the brake assembly, and it allowed me to get in here and weld these two, the pan to the frame. Just like up front, they didn't weld where the dam. Oddly enough, this side was cleaner than the other side. The other side had a bunch of grease and oil on it. I just got in there with a grinder and tried to clean up what I could. This side didn't weld where the dam. The other side, even though it had oil on it, welded a lot better. Go figure. All right, folks, that's all back together. I'm on the forward track again, it would seem. Next thing I'm going to do, this grill guard that I found in the scrap. I'm going to narrow that up, mount it on the front here. It'll be tall enough it'll protect the engine in case of a rollover, and it'll be good and sturdy for a tow point or a way to grab onto it and wrestle it around or whatnot. I also have to, this is the belt, I don't know, guide protector or whatever. Hold the belt on the engine crankshaft pulley. It's obviously too small now because of the bigger pulley. I'm going to have to make a new one or try to re-engineer this one a little bit. And I had this running a little bit ago and I had a fuel leak. This was the original O-ring, the one on the float bowl. It is really hard, and when I put it together I found this O-ring in my stash, and it was not that big when I put it on there, so this is not reacting well to the gasoline. It was a little bit big, but I could still kind of tuck it in there and get the bold seat. But yeah, once I had it running with the fuel pump going and it filled the bowl up completely, it did not react well to that gasoline. So I guess when I go to town tomorrow, I'll see about getting a new one of these. But anyway, it's some fabrication time. Timber. Or something like that was going to happen. I might have just ruined a brand new blade. Well, maybe it's just my imagination, but I don't think so. But this thing is crooked as hell. Before I started, I noticed that one of these was all warped and twisted. I spent a little bit of time putting in the vise and trying to beat on it with a sledgehammer, straighten it out, but I only got so far. That's like 1/2-inch steel. Yeah, there's only so much you can do with that without heating it up. I didn't want to put that much effort into it. You know what? I don't care if it's crooked. A little bit of crooked gives it some character. I'm going to burn it down for good now. Yep, that baby ain't going nowhere. Well, for the belt, I don't know what you'd call that. It's not really a guide. The belt keeper, I guess. I was actually able to cut the whole thing up. And yeah, I didn't have to add anything. I just kind of cut it up and used the pieces and repositioned. It's only tack welded. I'm going to try it out first, make sure it's not rubbing. If it is good, pull it off, weld it up fully. I also added some stops to the steering. So it'll stop right there instead of hitting the frame. because obviously if the tire swings over far enough and hits the frame, it just locks the tire up, and then you're not steering anyway, you're just plowing straight ahead. I could have got fancy and made them adjustable and welded a nut in there and a bolt and a lock nut, but I'm getting frankly sick of working on this thing. If I do never need to make adjustments, I can either grind some off or weld some more on it. Back out here in the shop this afternoon, working on Groundskeeper Willie again. Well, I'm bouncing back and forth between Groundskeeper Willie and cycling some carburetor parts through the ultrasonic cleaner. But let's see what I got done here today. Found this muffler a couple days ago in a truck I was cleaning out so I could scrap it out. Thought it was a nice little compact muffler. Originally I was kind of wanting to use this motorcycle muffler and do like I did with the crippler. Run it out the back here. But this is just a lot simpler for now. Maybe once I get the brake pedal stuff done, I'll know what kind of room I got. And then I can snake a pipe all the way through there if I feel like it. This isn't as quiet as I'd like, but it's not ear splitting either. To me, I think one of the worst sounds in the world is these air-cooled engines with open exhaust on them. Do not like that at all. It's the only thing worse than a loud V6. But here's what else I've done today. I had this, forgot I'd even had this tire grooving tool. What I decided to do is try to get some more, obviously these tires on the front are not pulling and there's no brakes, so the only thing they need to do is steer, so I want to try to optimize that. Now as you can see, there's actually pretty good tread here, it's just all the edges are rounded off. What I did with the tire groover on this lug, I took the center out here, and then I took this angled corner off here, tried to get the most optimum, crisp edge here as I could. On all these lugs here, I just took the corners off, gave them a little bit of a biting edge. These lugs here, I went through, cleaned this corner out, crispened that up. Crispened, is that a word? I don't know. And then did, kind of the same thing here. Took this off, tried to get as much surface area here with a biting edge. And here's the finished result. Not too shabby. I think they'll work much, much better. Oh yeah, and then I freshened up this edge here. But anyway, now that I got this done, I think I'm going to go try to round up the parts to try to make this right pedal brake assembly work for me. So let's see what I got. Folks, I do believe it's ready for a test ride. It's out here working till the wee hours of the morning yesterday. Got her all done, I believe. Right here, this tire, as I started carving it, I came up with a different plan than I did with this one. As you can see, here's the big chevron shaped lug, and this is what I did with the first one. And I came up with this idea for this one. Got a lot more biting edges this way. Also, I just kind of chinched out on my rear toe point, but I think it'll be just fine for a lawnmower. It's just an old U-bolt. I actually picked that up, whole bucket load of those at a swap meet a couple days ago, just for this kind of purpose. If I don't use them as U-bolts, they're good to weld onto trailers for tie-down points. This is one of the smaller ones, so it'll be good enough for this. And I left it sitting out long enough for whatever stupid reason if somebody wanted to stand on it. Catch a quick ride. Now here I talked about putting a right foot brake pedal on it, and it worked out really great, but also not so great. Now this rod runs all the way through. It's actually the clutch pivot rod. So basically I just made this sleeve to fit over it, made my own arm, pedal assembly, got a return spring there, and we've got this lever here that pulls on this rod. Now this rod was the original one to this mower, except it originally ran diagonally across here. So I straightened out all the bends in it, and the length worked out perfect for this. Basically I had to drill a hole right there for that, and then cut like 1 inch of it off. Now here's the problem. Because this rod is spring loaded, when you actually apply pressure to the pedal, it transfers that force to the brake through this spring. And this spring, due to most likely my changing of the leverage is like really easily overloaded. As you can see, I can push that pedal pretty easily with my hand. Now, granted, as this is pushed down, it's still applying more and more force because the spring is compressing more and more. I'm just not sure that's going to be enough. I was in town today at the hardware stores, and none of them had a heavier duty spring than this. If I'm not happy with the way this works, I'm sure it'll stop the rig. Pretty damn sure. It's just, yeah, it's going to be hard to modulate it here with as soft as that spring is. But if I'm not happy with it or can't seem to get used to it, I'll still keep looking for a heavier spring, or I might cut this off right about here and then weld a 3/8 threaded rod and run that up to here. And that way with that thread, I could actually preload the spring more and put a stop in it to where the spring will actually just kind of, at a certain point, the spring won't even be a factor anymore. It'll just be the solid rod. I could probably do that, yeah, right up in here. But anyway, let's fire it up and take it for a spin. Okay, so far the brakes are awful. I'm definitely going to have to do something to that. And it's actually taking a little bit getting used to actually having a brake on the right-hand side. Steering plows a little bit, enough that it's kind of annoying, but I don't know what more I can do about it. I'm going to go have some more fun on it. Thought there'd be more mud out here. It rained for like 3 hours last night, but I'm sure I'll end up stuck right about in there eventually. I'm going to skirt around it for a while before I hit the actual hole. playing with it a couple of days ago, I have made a couple of modifications. I put this big arch steering wheel on it. I'm kind of regretting that. Even though it didn't really seem like it needed it, I already bought it at a swap meet to put on here, so damn it, I'm going to put it on here. But the center of it is really flimsy. It's big enough, it kind of gets in the way, but more importantly, if this thing ever takes a tumble, it's going to bend the hell out of this thing because it's so flimsy. And yeah, you're not going to be able to really get the yanking and cranking on this, you know, because it's, like I said, it's just so flimsy. But it's too late now, it's already on there. Another thing I did with the brake, I took the spring out of it, and it's just a solid rod now. It is adjustable. The problem with that is it's still, there's not really much brake feel there. So you're not braking by pedal feel, you're braking by, you have to be conscious and aware of how the mower is slowing down. I bet if you stomped that pedal hard enough, you'd probably just break the little brake assembly right off the transaxle. Now obviously this was supposed to be a cheap and easy build. Was it? I don't know. For a lot of people, probably not. Compared to the crippler there, yeah, it was. I think I spent 1.5 years building that, just throwing in a few hours here and there. I think I have 3 months into this. If a person really committed to it, you know, you could probably do this in a couple of weekends, but it was just kind of to show what you could do with a less desirable model on a budget. I don't have a lot of money in this. It's mostly time, swap meet stuff, scrap, stuff I had laying around. I think the most money I put into it in a single allotment was for the shaft for the rear end and the lock collars and the what do you call it, the drive hub. But I don't know, a lot of people think that it's kind of silly messing around with lawnmowers, but I mean, they're everywhere. Unless you're in the desert Southwest, there's lawnmowers laying around everywhere. And you can find them dirt cheap and even free if you're looking in the right place at the right time and you're quick enough. And you know what? Mechanical principles are still the same no matter what kind of machine you're working on. They're just kind of fun. Honestly, I'm having more fun building them than I am riding them. And I keep finding myself on Facebook Marketplace looking at more mowers and like, no, I got other things I need to do. I've built 2 of them. I don't need to do anymore, but I still find myself looking at more of them. How does it compare with the crippler? Well, the crippler, I really love the low range, high and low range in that transaxle. That is a total game changer. This thing just moves too fast sometimes. I like the transaxle in this one because I can actually shift this thing on the go. It's a little notchy, but yeah, you can actually, you know, bang it into the next gear or next couple of gears without even hitting the clutch. The clutch kind of makes it a little easier, but it can be shifted. Where that one, it's a huge pain in the butt. This one rides a whole lot better, no doubt, due to pretty much exclusively the ATV tires on the front, I'm sure. I will look into getting some ATV tires on the front of that, even though I like the look of the motocross knobbies. I think it's definitely worth it for the ride quality. Now another thing, I guess, kind of why I like doing these, it really kind of takes me back to my early days of playing with 4-wheel drives. Back then, me and everybody else, we were on budget. We would take our vehicle, we would figure out, okay, I need to find this part from this vehicle in the junkyard and modify this. Nowadays, wheeling, it's all about money. So now, let's talk about the June 25th wheeling event. It is at a park here in southern Iowa. It's just south of Knoxville, which is the sprint car capital of the world, or so they claim. But that will be on a Sunday, June 25th, like I said. I talked with the landowner, and we should have the place to ourselves. Helmets are required. I guess, yeah, if you're playing in a grassy field or in a mud hole, but there's lots of places over there where you could conceivably dump them over and bang your head on something hard. So I kind of have to agree with them on that with the helmets. So helmets are mandatory. It's going to be $25 for the day to wheel. That's not going to me, that's going to the landowner. I'd love to have as many people come out, especially some experienced people come out and play, because I don't know anybody else that's doing this to actually go out and play. Anyway, yeah, love to have you there, June 25th. Look for my email in the description of the video. If you need more information, contact me through that email, and I'll get you some more info. And then the off chance that, or the actual very real chance that I forget to put my email in the video description, go ahead and just remind me in the comments. If you're wondering about what kind of conditions and what's all this park is all about, I've got some wheeling videos. We're wheeling full-size rigs there, but it should give you an idea the terrain and what the park is all about. It's an old coal mining strip mine area. I guess with that, I'm going to wrap up this video. Sorry it took so long, but I kind of wanted to get it all done in one shot. But thanks for watching. We'll see you later.